VCU is not ranked, which I'm not that surprised about. They're not really a team that gets ranked, but they're always a competitive enough team that seems to make the big dance all the way in March. And that's really the bottom line. That's what you're trying to get to in college basketball. You want to make the big dance. March Madness is arguably the greatest tournament of basketball ever. I love March Madness. It's so awesome. But yeah, I'm trying. They're not even in the. They didn't even get a vote for the AP Top 25, which sort of surprises me. I mean, Shaka Smart as a coach is.
But it's such a small program, and they don't. Problem with getting them into the top 25 is they really don't play any big name schools. And although they are good, as they've proven when it comes to tournament time the last couple years, they're like the new Gonzaga of the group. They don't have enough just yet to get them into that top 25 ranking. But I mean, if they put a good season together, listen, they'll be in the tournament and they'll be ready to make another run. You never know.
And that's what me and Marissa are pulling for. I mean, I'm a UNC fan through and through. That would be my favorite team. But when it comes down to a small program, I love VCU. I think Shaka Smart's a great coach. I'm actually sort of shocked that the man is still in VCU. I would have figured by this point one of the bigger name schools would have went and grabbed him. But at the same time, it's not like you're talking a dramatic thing for the guy. He seems to love really coaching there. He seems to love the kids. He seems to love the young program. So, with that said, I'm looking at our AP Top 25. You got Indiana ranked number 1, Louisville 2, Kentucky 3. Now, the Kentucky 3, after all the players they lost last year, I mean, 4 of their 5 starters went into the NBA draft, if I remember correctly, in Kentucky.
No, I thought all 5 went.
Or all five. Yeah, I'm sorry. I for some reason, I thought that sounded too drastic.
Went.
So all 5 of their freshman starters from last year went. Now, obviously, if there's one thing that they're good at over in Kentucky, it's bringing in young talent.
No, well, that's the thing that John Calipari's good at. He is an unbelievable recruiter. Like, unbelievable. I mean, you look at what he did years ago. I mean, a lot of people almost forget what he did in Memphis, but he, brought Derrick Rose there. He brought a lot of guys there. O.J. Mayo. O.J. Mayo, I'm sorry, was out of USC. What am I thinking? But he had he brought Memphis to prominence. He didn't win a national title there, but he had them as a top-ranked team in the country. Memphis doesn't really play anybody, or didn't until he got there. He made them what they were, and then he found his dream job, as some coaches say, and was able to move on to a team like Kentucky, which only bolstered what he was able to do from when he was in Memphis. Because now he's at a bigger school. So now you thought he was a good recruiter at Memphis. When you put Kentucky on his shirt, it looks a little more like, wow, he's at Kentucky? That's pretty good.
Yeah, only 1/3 of the entire Kentucky roster is either a junior or a senior. Everybody else is sophomores and freshmen. Total, they got 1, 2... They've got 4 freshmen total on their lineup. I mean, look at it. This one kid, Willie Cauley-Stein, he's a forward, 7 foot, 244-pound freshman. And they got a 6'7", 239-pound freshman. 6'4", 200-pound freshman. 6'10", 228-pound freshman. I mean, they have got some size. I'm actually surprised by that. You got a 6'10", 7 foot, 6'7", 6'10". Couple guards in there. I mean, look, to think Kentucky and Calipari can't do what they did last year, I think it would be underestimating Calipari and his skills. From there,
I think we should take a look at the AP Top 25, because I found it pretty interesting that they would have a team like Indiana number 1 overall. It's been a while. I mean, listen, they have a good squad. Everyone's really, really high on this kid, Cody Zeller.
Is that Tyler Zeller's younger brother?
Absolutely. And, a lot of people think this team is a team that can win it all, but I don't know if they should be number 1.
Well, they went 11-7 last year, or in their conference, finished 27-9. Yeah, I don't know, man. I have a hard time looking at them as the what's it called, as the number one team right now. But at the same time, I mean, I'm looking at their 2012 recruits. They brought in a kid, Yogi Farrell, point guard. He was graded as a 96 going into this year. Now, I don't completely understand how they go about grading college, talent coming out of high school into college. Obviously, a 96 is pretty damn high. I'm assuming 100's as high as you're going. So a 96 is pretty high. So they brought in 4 different kids that are considered 90 or higher. You've got Peter Jerkin, a center. Then you've got Hannah Mascara Pereira. That's a hard name to say. Power forward. And then also Jeremy Hollowell, a small forward on top of the Yogi Farrell point guard. So, I mean, they brought in some different pieces. But, I mean, when it comes down to this Indiana team, I don't see what they did last year that really makes you sit here and say they deserve the number one spot. I mean, I'm not saying you got to respect Kentucky just because they won it. You're like, oh, you get number one. Like, I get that. I'm not saying that's what you got to do, especially in college basketball. And, how we mentioned just before that, their 5 starters from last year are all in the NBA, including the number 1 overall pick, Anthony Davis. So, I mean, but I'm looking at, you look at their team and maybe
Anthony Davis.
He's killing me being injured.
The
right
unibrow.
Now. The unibrow.
The human unibrow.
Yeah, I mean, they got 4. You got 4 freshmen on the entire roster. Cody Zeller's a sophomore, 7 foot, 240 pounds. If he plays like his brother, he's definitely going to be pretty damn good. That's for sure. But like, I'm looking at their roster, and there's no names on here that pop out to me. There's nothing about anything that's really sticking out for me to sit here and say, well, they deserve the number one. I'd like to know the reasoning why the AP put him at number 1. Any guess?
I don't have a guess, honestly.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they finished 19th in points per game last year. They finished 9th in field goal percentage. And after that, they're out of the top 100 in rebounds per game, assists per game. So I don't really see anything off of that makes me sit here and say, well, they should be number 1. I don't know, man, to be completely honest with you. So with the rest of the AP top 25, you got Indiana at 1, like I said, Louisville at 2, Kentucky at 3. It's interesting to me. I like North Carolina State at 6. I think North Carolina State this year is going to be a pretty damn good basketball team. They were all right last year. They weren't anything amazing. They went 24-13 on the year, 9-7 in conference. And keep in mind, they do play in a conference that has North Carolina and Duke. So actually winning the conference is not the easiest thing for them. I mean, you sort of end up at a rock and a hard spot, but they always play North Carolina tight. They always do. It's always a great game between North Carolina and North Carolina State. And I like them at 6. I think North Carolina State is going to be a really good basketball team this year. And what else do we got? You got Kansas at 7, Duke at 8, Syracuse at 9, and Florida to round out your top 10.
It's going to be really interesting to see how Syracuse handles being in the ACC. Syracuse and Pitt really handle being in the ACC. You know, it's a different conference. It's a different animal. And, I mean, listen, they come from what was arguably the best college basketball conference, not football-wise, but basketball-wise, in the Big East. I mean, the Big East was always stacked between Louisville, Syracuse, Pitt, Georgetown. You know, the list goes on and on. Now you take a couple of those teams, you move into the ACC. Now Syracuse got to face North Carolina, Duke. You know, a couple teams they don't face on a normal basis. It'll be interesting. I want to see some of those matchups this year. I'm really interested to see some of those games. I think they're going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Well, I mean, pretty much every year you go into college basketball and you always point at the Big East, and the ACC is 2 of the best conferences, if not the 2 best conferences. And then from there you sort of go, you know, where do you go from there when it comes down to the rankings of college basketball conferences, I guess you would say. I know I love the ACC, love the Big East. I'm not a fan that they took Syracuse away and took Pitt away, but I think the Big East is still the Big East. Like, I don't think just losing the two of them really is going to kill the Big East when it comes down to basketball. You still got Notre Dame, you still got Georgetown, you still got UConn. You still got some really talented teams that are in the Big East. I mean, Notre Dame, year in and year out, college basketball-wise, always seems to be a really competitive basketball team.
Yeah.
They always do. I mean, and my favorite part about it is, and not to sound racist, but they're the only freaking team in college basketball that's loaded with white guys. And they still seem to be pretty damn good. And I just think to me, it's awesome. Like, yes, white man's still playing good basketball. Awesome. I'm sorry. I think it's hysterical when you put on an NBA basketball game and it's 12-man roster and the only white guy sitting on the entire bench is the coach. It's just, yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to be stereotypical here. I'm not trying to be, it's not like it makes me not want to watch the game of basketball or anything like that. I mean, thank God for the Fab Five from Michigan in the long shorts, or we'd be still staring at peach white legs up to the thigh. So I have no issue with that. I get excited seeing a team like Notre Dame that is just loaded with nothing but white dudes actually being competitive.
They always fade off, though. They don't. And I don't think it's because they're white that they're not as, but they just. Because I look at, I would even say maybe it's academic-wise, maybe it's something, but it's not, because you look at a team like Duke, and they have a good balance of both, believe it or not. And they do great every year. They got they got white guys, they got black, they got every color imaginable on that bench, and they do just fine every year. So I'm not gonna say that. I understand what you're saying. It's nice to see a throwback to the 40s with Notre Dame, but
without the short shorts. Creighton ranked at 16. The Creighton Blue Jays. That is very surprising to me.
Creighton, why? They're in the tournament every year.
I just don't say. It's 16. 29-6 last year, 14-4 in the conference. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I feel like college football. I mean, look at their conferences. I don't know. You got Wichita
College
State,
basketball is
Illinois
different,
State.
though, because they play in these tournaments. Like, to open the year, Creighton's probably going to play in one of these tournaments. And they're going to play some decent competition. I'm sure if you looked at last year's schedule, they probably, it's probably not loaded with good teams. They probably played a good team or two, though.
I just, that one sort of took me by surprise. I didn't see Creighton as a top 25 team. But then again, like you said, I mean, it is different than how they do college basketball. There's so many teams, they do so many different tournaments, and it almost reminds me of how they handle soccer out in Europe, where it's like while league play is going on, they have like 10 different tournaments throughout the season, and you're like all over the place. I mean, you got right now they got a cup tournament going on over in Europe right now that I've been trying to pay attention to, but I just haven't had time. There's just too much going on in the world of sports. But it's the same idea where it's like throughout the season there's these random little tournaments, like whether I love this weekend's tournament though. I love this whole Maui Invitational. I love the whole worldwide spreading of college basketball, going to the military bases and all that. I'm a huge fan of all that stuff. I really am.